We'll continue on with the line of questioning, seeing that's where our heads are all at. So you note that the agency has never met its statutory requirements. For both overall and for pesticides, what have been the peak rates? So even potentially looking back beyond the years that you've been sharing with us.
Senator, I'd have to take that on notice. I've got back to March 16, it looks like, and back to, as an overall figure, in 2015-16, but I couldn't give you an accurate, depending on what time frame you want, of the peaks and the troughs associated with that.
Well, I'm interested in knowing whether that 68% in 2015-16 was that, how that compared with previous years. Is that overall, was that fairly middling, or was it lower than usual, higher than usual?
It's very hard to compare because there was a different way of measuring before those figures. So you're not comparing apples with apples. I can certainly make an effort to give you that on notice without any trouble at all. But at this stage, it wouldn't be fair, because they were worked out differently, to say what was it in 14, and I don't actually even have the information with me.
Right. And is that overall, you're saying never having met the 100% requirement of approvals on time, is that correlated with the problems that you were talking about in terms of the economic problems? The fact that because the approvals are taking longer than necessary, there's more staff time. It's one of the reasons as to why your expenses are more than your revenue.
I think, Senator, as I said, in my opening remarks, I'm not in a position to be able to accurately give information to this committee on that particular issue. I simply do not know all the factors that are affecting that performance. I'm hopeful at the end of the year we will have a much better picture of what those factors are and what we may be able to do to tweak that so we're able to deliver in a better timeframe performance.
Right. And so your 70% target for the next financial year, so is that across the board for both veterinary medicine and pesticides?
The 70% would be an overall result. I would hope we might do better than that in some of the other ones.
So what do you have a target for? We've got pesticides which are considerably lower than the other categories.
I would like to see them all at 70%.
Do you think that's a realistic target?
I would at least like to think that they're on an upward trajectory.
And do you think, obviously, this coming year is going to be a time of change, as you've got staff moving, you've got the ongoing staff volatility, as I hear it. Do you think that's realistic? What are the strategies that are going to enable you that would be doubling the timeliness of the pesticides for it to get to 70%?
Senator, there are a number of things that I've already put in place as far as improving the performance goes, and that's resolving the CCI issue. That's also putting in place some improved procedures.
What's the CCI issue?
Sorry. Let me get the commercial confidence information. Okay. And that's the information, Senator, that is provided to us to support applications, and where we have generic products that want to use information, we're able to use that information. It's just then how we provide that in public, and that caused some considerable issues off the back of a court case for the organisation. So we put out a new practice statement that addresses that since we've started. We've also worked very closely with the industry about how we might use international assessments and international approvals of products in Australia. There are some differences, and we're talking with industry about how we manage that. The other thing which Mr Thompson mentioned was I'm also starting to look at how we might manage a provisional registration scheme as well, all of which is in place to try and improve the performance of the organisation.
Right, okay. Moving on to the issue of staff and the staff movements. So you mentioned that you've had 11 staff in your small group that have responded to your expression of interest in saying they would like to move. sometime in 2018 or early
No,
2018?
they'd like to move early.
Early,
That was
okay.
what the EOI was about, was
Right.
early. Just to be clear, I haven't asked all the staff, and I intend to do that early next year, about their intentions about relocation.
Right. What are the categories of those 11 staff?
I'd have to take it on notice, Senator, but a number of them are senior managers in the organisation.
Right. How about in terms of the scientists, the regulatory scientists? Have you got any sense of how many of those
Again, I'd
are?
have to take it on notice to give you an accurate assessment.
Right. And so with you noting that you've said that you haven't put out an EOI at the moment, what's your and noting also that you've said you do want to now have a staged movement of staff rather than sort of all in one go, what's your expectation of the number of staff that would be at Armidale by the end of next year?
By the end of next year,
Yeah.
I don't have an expectation at this stage.
But surely, given you're going to need accommodation for them, you'd have to be doing some forward planning for what.
So on the accommodation, the temporary.
I'm not sure that this is borders on, hypothetical. I mean, Mr. Parker's
I think it's
capable
quite a
of...
reasonable question. It's just end of next year is a year ahead. Any organisation, if it's going to be
Well, where are you
efficiently
going to be
planning,
at the end of next year, Senator?
efficiently
That's a
planning would
crazy
be
question.
looking a year ahead.
Mr. Parker, you manage
Still
it...
be sitting there frustrated because I can't get some answers.
It takes us 20 minutes every time we open this. Mr. Parker, you manage it how you see, but it is bordering on being a hypothetical question.
But there are no rules against hypothetical questions, I understand.
Correct. Well,
and
the
estimates.
witness has responded by telling you he has no sense of it, so let's not spend a pursuit of that when the witness has made it clear. You have the call centre, right?
So Dr. Parker, so you have a cohort of 3 there at the moment. You've got another 11 who want to move early. So that's 14. And so you would expect to have 14 there by, February or March, something like that?
So, Senator, it might be simplest to answer this question in how I'm preparing.
Yes.
Okay. So currently, the interim office has facilities for 15 people.
Right.
I have asked my staff to investigate with the Department of Human Services, who we share the accommodation with, the option of reconfiguring that office to allow us to have up to 35 or 40 seats there. It would be my assessment that that will be fine for probably the next 6 to 8 months, but asking me how many will be there in 12 months or even 15 months actually time, I don't have a sense of that exact answer, but I think that gives you a sense of how we're planning going forward.
Okay, well, perhaps if I put it another way, of your cohort of, you said that 216 is close to the full complement, that's what you've got at the moment. Do you now have an expectation of how many of those will eventually be based in Armidale and how many will be working remotely?
So the short answer to that is no. Again, if I could just take a step back, the business model that I would like to implement would be that all the staff moved to Armidale and we did the job from Armidale. That is not realistic for the current staff. So we then need to think about what functions are going to be where and what functions might be done by a third party, or we might commission that. We might, certainly in the corporate space...
So you're looking at outsourcing some functions? Let's come back to that. I'll just note
come back to that. So in a corporate sense, we're investigating actively with the department about them doing this on a shared services for us as well. So there are a range of options depending on what the function is. Where a staff member indicates they want to move to Armidale, the function they are doing will move to Armidale with them. Where staff members do not, and I stress I have not asked all staff members whether they're moving or not, where they don't want to move, we need to think about how we're going to manage that function into the future, and there will be a range of options to manage that function. And I am not going to settle on one option just now because that needs to remain flexible. So we're able then to provide and continue to provide the service that industry expects.
At a suitable time.
Okay.
We need to move on.
So
we're doing this in 20-minute blocks, so...
yes, well, I started at about 6:05.
Well,
So 20 minutes, that's fine, that's another 7 minutes. Thank you, Chair.
No, listen, that's not when she started,
So
but
that
I'm not going to make
range
an issue of it.
range of different ways to be fulfilling those functions, what are those options you're looking at?
It depends on the function.
Politeness has been
So
tested.
if we look at the reg scientist, the traditional
No, I'm gonna do
scientist who will be
McDonald's.
assessing an application, it's our assessment, and the high-level business model talks about this, that probably those functions will be suitable for e-working. That does not mean that all the people in those functions will be suitable for e-working. E-working, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is a product of both whether the function is suitable but whether the individual is suitable. Some individuals will go extremely well working by themselves. Others do not go so well. They like the social environment of a workplace. They may not be as self-motivated as others. So we need to make an assessment of that. And once we've finished and finalised the consultation around the e-working policy, which I mentioned in my opening statement, we will then be in a position to trial and take expressions of interest, who wants to e-work, make some selections from that. It would be my intention to trial that in Canberra, so probably in a flexible working arrangement. So they might 3 days e-work, 2 days back in the office in Canberra. Let's see how that arrangement works. If it looks like it's working well, then those officers would go on to be e-working on a more permanent basis. So it's about, I call it tasting and trying something. So we get in, we settle on the policy, we see who wants to be involved in the policy, we then make a selection process of people we believe, and that will be in close consultation with their managers, may be suitable. We then go, great, let's trial that, see how that runs. If it's a good option for that function into the future, then that function's settled. We can go, righto, we don't need to worry about filling those roles in Armidale because we can manage the function in that manner. Now, that's what I mean. I don't have a permanent view about every single function because I think we need to remain flexible.
So how about staff that are currently fulfilling functions that a staff person that either because of the function or because of the person isn't appropriate for e-learning, they've currently got a job in Canberra, they don't want to move to Armidale?
So, Senator, then there are a range of options that we're working through with those people. A number have already outlined in our enterprise agreement. We are providing, we've had, I think, 92 staff members go to a whole lot of career sessions that we're running. I'm sure if you can appreciate, if you've been in a job for a number of years, you probably haven't written a CV or an application for a little while, so we're providing that training for people as well to assist them in the transition into a new job, and I think that's all reasonable. There are provisions within the EA if we get to a period of time where people may choose to retire, they may choose to take may get to the stage where they may need a voluntary redundancy. All of those options are open and they're all explained to staff in our EA. And in fact, what we're just working on now is some guidance material for our staff with some of those pathways that you're describing, with how they might manage those pathways themselves.
So will there be forced redundancies if things don't suit out?
They're not forced. They're not forced redundancies.
But in the situation where you've got someone that for the e-working isn't going to either work for them or the organisation, and the scenario of the bulk of the organisation moving to Armidale, not having an office in Canberra, and it's not going to work for them.
They may choose the pathway to investigate a voluntary redundancy.
But what if they don't choose a voluntary redundancy? Say, no, I'm here, I'm working for the APVMA.
Senator, again, I can only tell you the pathways that are available in the EA, and I am hopeful that those we can assist to provide assistance and guidance in finding new employment elsewhere if they don't want to move to Armidale. I don't have a sense of the numbers at the end. I really don't.
No, it may be quite
zero.
small.
I don't know.
Right. But are you ruling out then forced redundancies?
I don't see them as forced redundancies.
No, but are you ruling them out?
They are voluntary redundancies, and they're voluntary.
But you can't have a voluntary redundancy if it's not voluntary. If they don't want to leave, if they're in Canberra, e-working doesn't suit them or the organisation for whatever reason.
Look, I don't want to rule anything in or out at this stage. I really don't.
How is the development of the virtual network going to enable the
This is
the
your last
e-working?
question too, Senator.
So the priority, Senator, in the digital sense for me is stabilising the network. It is digitising the data that we have. We have over 200,000 files that need to be digitised, and it's that preparation work that will provide the framework for e-working. We're able to manage the Armidale office at the moment, but it's suffice to say there has been a chronic lack of investment in IT in the organisation, and we struggle a bit in that space at the moment.
So are you
Thank you,
confident this is all going to be on
Senator
track
McKenna.
by
Senator
2018
Rice.
when you move?
I
Senator Rice.
am as confident as I can be.
Thank you.